My name is Blake Ballard. I live at 816 North Grant Street in Moscow. And Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, I am one of those disgruntled retirees. Most of you received an email from me the other day with several handouts to it, and I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, the mailing list that I used did not have anything on it. So
Thank you. I'll see that the city clerk gets a copy of this.
I am opposed to the Upper Lochsa Land Exchange, but that's not why I'm here. If anyone wants to hear my reasons, I'll certainly easily have my arm twisted to tell you why. But the reason I'm here is, if given opportunity, to answer any questions that you might have of me. I'm not a NEPA expert by any means, thank goodness, but I could answer some questions on the land exchange. I'm here to stress what I think is the appropriateness of this body commenting to the exchange, and why you should, even though none of the parcels in the proposed land exchange are in the city of Moscow, they're certainly close enough by. One misnomer that I try to correct is, it's not a misnomer, but you often hear that there's about 2,500 acres in Lochsa County that's in the exchange, the proposed exchange. But the Palouse Ranger District consists of about 8,000 acres in the proposed exchange, and the Palouse Ranger District is the closest National Forest Ranger District to the 100,000 people in Lochsa and surrounding counties, of which Moscow is, about 25,000 of that. So it's very important to the people of Moscow as well as Lochsa County. The people in Moscow, they hunt and fish, pick huckleberries, cut firewood, camp, do all those things on the National Forest. But more than that, they buy their supplies from local businesses for camping and hunting and fishing. They get their gas. People come here specifically to hunt and fish or do those things on the National Forest, the forested public land, and they shop. They stay in motels in Moscow. So it's very important to that. When I, at the peak of when I was, the tenure of mine on the Palouse Ranger District, there were about 15 employees, full-time employees, that worked on the district that lived in Moscow. So, we went to church here, our children went to school here, we grocery shop, we did all the things that you all do in Moscow. Today, I don't believe there's that many people that live here, but there's not that many people on the district as there were back then. But also we have the university, both universities actually. The Palouse Ranger District is an actual outdoor classroom and laboratory to people in wildlife, weeds and fisheries, timber, all of the aspects of the National Forest. That's where they go and do a lot of their lab work and outdoor classroom work. So there's many reasons why the people in Moscow should feel it's appropriate to address this land exchange. There's some misunderstanding, I believe, or disagreement or differences of opinion, I guess, on just exactly what needs to be, or how specific one needs to be able to maintain standing. Just today, a current employee on the Palouse District mentioned to me that in order to be able to appeal a certain point in the final environmental impact statement, you needed to make a comment on that specific point in the draft. So I know some people are they're making enough comment that they think they have standing, and I'm really not sure. What I've done with my 29-page comment letter is to make sure that I addressed in some fashion everything that I was concerned about, so that if I should find reason later on to appeal it, I am guaranteed that I have standing because I made some comment on it in the draft. So, yes, we have a question?
Council have questions for Mr. Fowler? Sure. Tim?
Sure, Janie, thank you. Mr. Fowler, in your 29-page comment statement, did you address the financial impact to the Board of Education, the school system in Idaho, if these lands were exchanged? If there, and I guess my question perhaps should be, is there a financial impact to education in Idaho?
You're talking about Department of Land properties logged for the purpose of benefit of state schools, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Schools in the state.
As far as taxes and
Stumpage.
monies in lieu of taxes to the local government. I think the draft, and this is not one of my areas of expertise by any means. I spent most of my effort on those areas that I was most familiar with and I was most qualified. But as I recall from the draft, there's very little difference between any of the alternatives. Some there's a positive effect, some there's a negative, but I don't believe there's probably even a % or so difference between any of the alternatives.
And when you say a percentage of difference in income to public education?
I'm not sure exactly how that's worded in the draft, but the way they compare alternatives is plus and minus percentage points.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably a difference between the various alternatives is a very small percentage point. So there's not much difference as to whether you're getting money in lieu of property taxes or tax. Of course, if Western Pacific Timber acquired the lands that are the National Forest lands, these 8,000 acres on the, or let's say the 2,500 acres, $2,500, or 2,500 acres that are in Latah County, that would be money that you'd be receiving property taxes on rather than money in lieu of taxes. But you're on the one case you're getting property tax, in another case you're getting funds in lieu of taxes, and it more or less balances out so that there's just very little difference.
So that one isn't greater than the other. The property taxes
Right.
aren't worth more than the timber, and the timber isn't worth more than the property tax.
I'm not sure what all they included. They should have included timber value as well as property taxes, but that's, although I didn't dwell on that particular part of the draft environmental impact statement, I know that's typical of much of the draft, is that they didn't consider lots of things that they should have. I could give you an example. The only thing they talked about in comparing recreation, and I think recreation is one of the biggies as far as this area is concerned, because that's where the people recreate. And it doesn't do the people of Latah and surrounding counties much good to get 39,000 acres in the upper Lochsa and give up 8,000 acres for it. But one of the things, they compared alternatives by comparing recreation opportunity spectrum. And what that is, there's about 5 different categories. One is roaded, well, I can't even remember, but there is different types of road access or road use. If it's four-wheel drive road, that's one category. If it's a road that you could drive your sedan on, that's another category. And so they compared it in that aspect, which I said in my comment that's totally meaningless. That's just an example of some of the fallacies or some of the shortcomings of the draft, is they just didn't recognize things. One of the issues was old growth, and in the old growth section they used 5 different terms that were not defined. They were technical terms, such as there was old growth, designated old growth, potential old growth, replacement old growth, and something else. I don't remember, but they didn't define any of those terms. The only one they defined was old growth itself, and they gave 3 different definitions for that. Just stuff like that all the way through.
Well, I appreciated that you brought up the University of Idaho's use as a kind of a natural laboratory. We have a very well-respected College of Natural Resources, and I can't believe I didn't think to write that on my memo
well,
to the council, so I hope they consider that.
One of the ladies on the Friends of the Palouse Ranger District group called me today, and she called me twice and reminded me to emphasize that. Another one was elk. Now, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation is strongly behind this. In fact, they're one of the partners. There was the Forest Service, Western Pacific Timber, and Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation are their partners in this exchange. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation strongly supports this, but the Idaho Fish and Game Department does not. You know, they emphasize that particularly the area in the Palouse is better year-round elk habitat than the Upper Lochsa is. The Upper Lochsa is summer range, but it's not winter range. And there's much more hunter opportunity on the Palouse than there is in the Upper Lochsa.
Let's see, I think Sue had a question there.
Yeah, well, one of the things is that Tom Stroshine said that, what I heard him say was that the county wasn't taking a particular position on this, but what the county was saying is that there are a lot of questions, especially, and I can see a lot of the questions brought up by the retired Forest Service employees that are not answered or addressed.
That's right.
In the draft EIS, and that I would be willing to support the county in saying that there are a lot of questions that aren't answered, that before this draft economic impact statement is not sufficient to make a decision, and should not be allowed, should be like go back to the drawing board. But my other question was specifically is, if the land is not exchanged, the land that's in the forest, under the Forest Service, USA ownership and under the direction of the Forest Service, it could still be contracted out for logging without giving
Yes.
up ownership.
All of the lands.
It doesn't mean that there would be trees that there would be no value harvested. It still could be harvested.
One of the misnomers about the Palouse Ranger District parcels is that it's not being logged, but it has. My main job on the Palouse Ranger District I was in charge of timber sale preparation and contract and harvest.
So besides
supervision.
recreation, there is timber economic
yes.
benefit.
It's been managed for years, and it's well managed, and everywhere there's a tree been cut, there's plantations. And there has been clear cutting, and I can show you some beautiful plantations. When I first came to the Palouse District in 1977, there was a particular timber sale on one of these parcels in the Crane Point parcel that was being logged when I came. And that was 34 years ago. 10 to 15 years ago, I could have shown you merchantable-sized trees on those clear cuts. I mean, it was clear cut when I came. I dare say that there's not I wouldn't say there's not an acre, but there's not a stand within the Palouse District parcels in this exchange that has not been restocked. There's been.
So forest management practices have changed relative to what's on that Lochsa parcel as I've read the materials.
It has.
So,
excuse me.
I was just going to comment. Sue's remark about, I've heard from a few council members here saying, well, let's just sort of weigh in and say, well, we think the document is inadequate. But if, in fact, the requirement of standing on specific points is that those specific points are addressed in the comment period, it would be unfortunate to lose the opportunity to weigh in if we just said, well, we just don't like any of it. So, I would encourage the council to try to find specific inadequacies to address, however you choose to address them. Walter?
Madam Mayor, I want to believe that my votes on this dais are informed votes, whether it be stop signs or land exchanges or whatever you want to call it, that I have made an effort to understand what I'm voting on. I have not made that effort on this. This came up last Wednesday, and I, for one, am not prepared to make specific comments about a document I hadn't even read. I can't do it, and I'm not willing to accept someone else, whoever, telling me, trust me, just say this is wrong and we're in good shape. I just can't do that. A question for Mr. Ballard, if I might. Who initiated this whole idea? Where did it first germinate?
The Clearwater National Forest Plan, part of their strategy for land adjustment strategy has been since 1987 when their forest plan first came out, has been to consolidate in the Upper Lochsa. Western Pacific Timber Company acquired, it was 39,000 acres in the Upper Lochsa. They bought those from Plum Creek Timber Company, who did the logging. Western Pacific Timber bought that with the express purpose of exchanging it to the Forest Service because they knew the Forest Service wanted to acquire that. Western Pacific Timber first proposed that it be exchanged for lands in the Payette National Forest near McCall. And the Payette National Forest said it's not in the public interest to exchange these lands for lands in the Upper Lochsa. So they went back to the drawing board and they identified some lands. I think these were general areas. These weren't specific parcels, but they identified lands up near Priest Lake. That was their second choice, around Priest Lake. And the Idaho Panhandle National Forest said it's not in the public interest because of forest plan terminology, said it's not in the public interest to exchange these lands for lands in the Upper Lochsa. So their third choice was the Palouse District. And the Palouse District has, in all of the alternatives, the Palouse District has the most acreage of any of the national forests. There's some on the Nez Perce, some on the Panhandle that would also be in this exchange, but over half of it is on the Palouse District. But they identified, they said they'd like to exchange for lands on the Palouse District. And I believe at that point, the forest supervisor went to the district ranger on the Palouse District and said, let me know what all lands you've got that we could come up with in this exchange. And the Palouse District ranger, who was fairly new at the time and was not familiar with the district, she went to a land adjustment plan that I helped develop in 1987. It was not a formal plan. It was just a plan that we developed to guide land exchanges for consolidation on the Palouse District. You know, the Palouse District's got a lot of scattered ownerships, and I believe in consolidation. So we developed this plan as a kind of a strategy for consolidating. What it was an opportunity sort. If someone, Potlatch, for example, or the state of Idaho or Bennett Lumber, proposed a land exchange, we could go to this plan and see whether it was in our best interest to pursue an exchange in there, because there was nothing like that that existed on the district. So the district ranger and the forest supervisor at the time, who was a different forest supervisor than is there now, it was Tom Riley at the time, and we have a different ranger than the ranger that's there now also. But they identified scattered lands and also some lands that were shown on this map as available for exchange. But again, this plan was developed for guiding land exchanges that would consolidate on the district. In other words, this parcel on the district for that parcel so that we could consolidate our lands. And it was misused. We didn't have a write-up. Just 2 weeks ago, I did a write-up that was endorsed by everyone who had been on the original team to draw up this plan, and I sent it to Supervisor Brazel just to let him know what the original plan had been. He said, well, we needed something to grab a hold of. We needed something to attach to. And that's why some of these parcels were included in the Upper Lochsa Exchange, because we had shown them as being available for exchange. However, 50% of the parcels on the Palouse District that are in the Upper Lochsa Exchange were parcels that we identified as areas we wanted to retain. So they completely misused the plan. Plus, what it did, the 50% that was identified as lands available for exchange took away our trading stock. For any efforts to consolidate on the Palouse District was taken away because the trading stock we had, and there truly some scattered parcel, but we've dealt with that. I say we, we've dealt with that for years. We have acquired rights of way. We've identified property boundaries and corners. We've done the things we needed to do to manage the land. And now that that's all done, they say that, well, there are problem areas to manage, so we'll get rid of them. But,
I think Mr. Ballard just, used that terminology, "we," and I think there is a sense of ownership by the public of these properties close by. Walter, did you have a follow-up?
Just to follow up, so to try to, and thank you for that. So would it be correct to say that this started with a Forest Service long-range plan,
yes,
effectively making them a seller? I know it's an exchange, but a seller. And then a timber company who, knowing that, wanted to do an exchange and effectively became a willing buyer. So you've got a willing seller, a willing buyer. An environmental impact statement is required in order to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And people, the public, former employees on the Palouse Ranger District, not exclusively them, but a large number of them apparently, don't want to see it happen. Is that kind of where we are? Thank you.
before the environmental impact was begun, it was required that they do a feasibility analysis. And the feasibility analysis was supposed to determine that it was in the public interest to continue with the exchange. Several of us believe that they did not establish that it was in the public interest because of some of the requirements to establish in the public interest was that the established uses of the lands adjacent to those that would be disposed of would be would be consistent with the uses that the Western Pacific Timber would use the lands for. The lands that the forest plan identifies for those lands being exchanged is timber management emphasis. But it's established, and it's in the draft environmental impact statement, that it is reasonably foreseeable that Western Pacific Timber could sell some of those lands that they would acquire for development. And so based on that, I, for one, have claimed that that's in conflict with what the established use of the land is now. The emphasis is on timber management, not development. And so if I can get that contention through, then it might even go back to ground zero, because they did not do the first prerequisite, which was to establish public interest.
Well, we appreciate your comments. Mr. Ballard, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there others here tonight who want to comment? Did somebody have a question?
Just
Oh, looks
one
like somebody has a
final
question
question.
for you. Sorry. Tim?
Sir, this may sound like a stupid question, but the National Forest Service is one organization. How do you, in your hierarchy of organization, how does it compare to the Palouse Ranger District?
Well, the Palouse Ranger District is the smallest unit of the National Forest System. The district is part of a national forest.
It sounds like you guys are contradicting what the National Forest Service leaders want. They want one thing, and you guys are saying, we don't want that.
That's right.
Just like the Payette and the Priest Lake said.
They had in their forest plan language that, and I'm not sure what that language was, but there was, what was told to me by former Supervisor Riley was that they had forest plan language which specifically excluded those lands from being exchanged in a land such as this. And the Clearwater National Forest does not have such language.
So the national boys asked your opinion and then disregarded it.
Nobody asked my opinion to begin. No, they, this is driven not from particularly local.
All right.
This is a national.
National.
The chief of the Forest Service in Washington is the former regional forester from Missoula, and his instructions to former Supervisor Riley was make it happen.
Yeah.
Make this exchange happen. It wasn't, his instructions were not trade Palouse Ranger District lands to get the upper Lochsa. He was make it happen, and Mr. Riley designed the exchange. One thing I haven't mentioned, since I told you that I wasn't going to be telling you why I'm so opposed to it, but the concern of many of us, particularly the retirees from the Palouse Ranger District, is that if this land exchange goes through, that would precipitate a snowball effect that would cause other land exchanges, because there's another checkerboard situation in the upper St. Joe. It's almost identical to the upper Lochsa. And if they can take 8,000 acres from the Palouse Ranger District in exchange for the upper Lochsa, then the upper St. Joe would be next. And this isn't the first exchange like this. There's been other exchanges on the Clearwater of these big consolidation of checkerboard parcels. The upper Cedar Creek, and then I believe it's the North Fork of the Clearwater is another one. And somewhere down the road, it wouldn't take, it would take another lean budget year, mandates to cut full-time equivalents in the workforce, other mandates to make the Forest Service run more efficiently, and somebody would look at the Palouse Ranger District and say, see, there's nothing left. The 8,000 acres that would come from the Palouse District, 60% of that is within less than 20 miles of the Potlatch Ranger Station. That's what that does. That in effect increases your travel time to the field. That spreads out the district by taking those close-in acres. Yes.
Specifically, I was thinking about our surface water retention project, which could take in either the north slopes or the south slopes of Moscow Mountain. Are any of that land in the Palouse Ranger District?
No, there's no longer any national forest in the South Fork of the Palouse. There used to be some.
On either side of Moscow Mountain?
Not this side of Moscow Mountain.
Not on the north side either?
No.
Okay.
Not to the Palouse River.
Okay.
Tim?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard.